with another presentation. It's about really looking into differences between genders in their computer user profiles and also in their performance on mathematical computer-based. So here the computer-based comes in again, tests. And Marta De Simoni will present this paper for you.
Yes, thank you very much for your introduction. I'm very pleased today to share with you some of our preliminary results about the association between computer user profiles, gender, and computer-based digital assessed mathematics in early adolescence in Italy. Can you hear me? Yes. I will present without slide because my slide that's okay, because I'm a digital immigrant. So, yeah. So we start with a prejudice that is a generational prejudice. That is that our teens, our children are digital natives. So that they are often said to be an homogeneous and uniform generation that are very highly exposed to ICT since their birth, and that they are very confident in using ICT, and that they have very high ICT skills. And this is a stereotype because it is a belief and expectation that a generalized view of our young people. However, a lot of research challenge the myth of digital natives. For instance, here there is the reference to a very nice review of Heinon from 2020. So we know from literature that we need a more fine-grained picture of our digital native generation in order to avoid neglecting inequalities among them. For instance, if we think about the COVID pandemic period, there is the COVID pandemic period shed light on a large number of inequalities among our students. For instance, differences in HS. There are still different in HS. Different in their pattern of usage, okay? A difference in their digital skills. For instance, if they are exposed to smartphones since their birth, it doesn't mean that they are very good in using the computer, okay? To obtain a more fine-grained pictures of the generation of digital natives is also important to advance our understanding of the relationship between computer usage and achievements, especially now that in a lot of large-scale assessment we use digitally computer-based tests. So, as for gender, we know that most of the literature is based on difference on digital gender inequalities in adulthood. So if we look for digital inequalities, digital gender inequalities, we find a lot of results about adulthood. So these are also the difference still persists, and then often related to stereotypes. What is a stereotype? It's a generalized view and expectation, a simplification of the world that helps us to interpret the world. However, it can be very dangerous because it can limit our freedom to pursue our objectives, to choose the correct career. Okay, for instance, in a very nice campaign against stereotype, there are a number of picture, and to be aware of our stereotypes, we have to ask ourselves: is this picture unexpected? It is unusual in our mind. If you think to ICT digital specialist, ICT specialist, do you think to a man or a woman? These have a role in the digital gender inequalities. Here we have some data. For instance, a number of reviews like that women use ICT less frequently and for a narrow range of activities than men. And then this review might be in some way not very updated. However, we have very important data from women in digital from the European Commission, which highlight that there are persistent gender gap in special skills and employment, so the gap is closing in the internet user skills. And unfortunately, even if the picture is becoming better for the Europe countries, Italy has a very troubling picture. It has a very low ranking, okay? So we are very far to reach gender equality in the digital realm. What about young people? What about our adolescents, for instance? There are the same difference we observe in adulthood? Okay. Some studies suggested that the pattern or relationship between access to technologies in adolescents reflect those observed in adulthood. For instance, I here reported the reference. However, other results have suggested that the difference, the gender gap, is going to be reduced, is narrowing across time, over time. In the last year, a number of studies moved from focusing on general variable about access and frequency of use, so to focusing on specific pattern of computer usage, even if there is not a consensus based on the results. Here I reported some of this study. For instance, the first one indicated that in 2011 boys were more likely than girls to be computer users who benefit from the multiple possibility that ICT offers. So they use ICT for multiple purposes. Another result that we can find in the literature is that the gaming boy, maybe it is a stereotype, but that boys are more early use ICT especially for gaming. Okay, and girls only for educational skills. Another important point in our review of the literature is that although we know that there are some inequalities also about in the young people, there is no consensus on the link between individual differences in the access and use of ICT and the student competencies. They are the picture that we find in literature is we find contrasting results. Another point is that most of the studies on the association between ICT use and educational achievement are based on an approach, classical regression approach, to summarize, more or less sophisticated, multi-level, with latent variable. However, a variable approach where we are looking for the unique contribution of, for instance, ICT for learning purposes, also we control for other variables, okay, or for learning for ICT used for entertainment. Also, we control for socio-demographic factors and other variables. Okay. Relatively few studies are exploring this relationship in a different perspective. So, moving toward the person-centered and person-centered approach. So, focusing on different typologies of computer users. Move to this perspective too. These are our research questions. So the first one is if we can individuate different typologies of computer use among our young students. In Italy, just few times before the COVID pandemic started, our first avenue is to compare the situation after the pandemic. Our second question is if students' gender and other socio-demographic characteristics predict student likelihood to belong to one of the different computer user terminology. The last question is the following: if computer user subgroup membership predict student performance in computer-based tests assessing math. This study was done not in the national study of INVALSI, but in the field trial, because we started to include these variables also with mathematician experts, because it is very important to know if there is, for instance, differential adding function in computer-based items, based, for instance, in a computer user profile, difference in access and use. This is why we use this very short questionnaire together with the measure of the field trial in order to assess student computer uses. And for instance, students were asked to how often they use a computer outside of school for reading books, for doing their homework, for seeking for school-related, searching for information for school-related purposes, for free time activities, or to communicate. And then an item about the overall frequencies of computer use. These are short scale, not the optima, obviously, but we have a lot of constraint during the duration of the test administration. This very short questionnaire was administered with 5 computer-based tests that have been developed by our expert based on the INVALSI theoretical framework. They've been composed on the same blueprint of the INVALSI national assessment and undergo to qualitative assessment and rush analysis, and then have been calibrated onto common metrics. For the purpose of the study, we estimate also the plausible value from latent model regression using as independent variables all the items that the socio-demographic variable and the variable we use in the model that I will show in the further step. So we ask for our research question. So we can we individuate different typology of computer users? Okay. So moving from a general population to different subpopulation. So we perform a latent class analysis with mixed metric indicators. We perform a 3-step manual latent class analysis. First, we start with an unconditional model without auxiliary variables. So we only use in the first step the indicators for the latent classes that are our 7 items about computer usage. Okay, so we are here. We use some plus, here some info about the statistical part of the story. I think that the important thing that we take into account that students are clustered in classes. We have about 1,000 students within 72 classes, so it's very important to take into account the cluster, the nature of our data set. Okay, we estimate 5 solutions from one class, only the first one only one class, then to 5 class solution. And here we in order to decide what is the best solution, we use some multiple criteria as we found in literature about latent class model. So here I report a number of incremental index, which are also reported in the Elbow plot. Okay. And we also perform the likely ratio test comparing nested models, because if one model with more classes perform as well as the one with less classes, we are required to choose the more parsimonious one. And then we consider also a number of characteristics of the selected solution as entropy, accuracy of the classification, and the interpretability of the solution. We selected at the end a 4-class model. The 4-class model was retained after a discussion with all the teams. Okay. And we have, in order to describe the different classes, we used the different variables. On the one hand, the probability, the conditional probability that someone in a particular latent class will use a computer daily. So we can see that there are 2 classes where this probability increase. So they are higher frequency. They use more often computer than the other 2. Our nice pictures provide about the means of the latent class across our items. And for instance, we can see. I cannot see because I cannot see it very well. To be sincere. Okay. I see better to the screen. So we have, for instance, the latent class number 4 that is composed by students who use computer very frequently, but only for entertainment. But it is they use less computer for school-related purposes, for instance. one, okay? Then we have a Latin class composed by students who use computer for across a range of activities. And then we move towards a very small group of analogic students who don't use computer. We know they cannot have access or they are not interested, their parents don't give them the permission, however they don't use very often computer across all the activities. This is also consistent with the other indicator. And okay, and then we have also a class of students who use computer, especially not very frequently, and when they use it especially for searching for information for school-related purposes or for doing their own work. So we try to characterize these small Latin classes. I don't know if it is clear. The one with the larger prevalence is this one. So the composed by students who use a computer for a wide range of activities. Okay, then we have the one we use computer mainly for educational purposes. The one we use it every but for entertainment purposes, and lastly the one who use a computer don't use a computer very often, so they are analogic. Then in 5 minutes, so the next question was, okay, does gender predict the likelihood of belonging to a particular group of computer user? Okay, let's see our results. So here we are here. We then estimate an overall model, so including also auxiliary models in the three-step approach. So we are here, we're trying to see if student gender predict the typology of computer user. Also other coverages are controlled for instance, socioeconomic background, the geographical area, the immigrant background. I summarize very quickly the results is that students' gender only predict the likelihood to be in the group of students, subgroup of students who use technology only for entertainment. And these are male, okay? Whereas there are no difference between the Latin classes. These are the alternative parameterization, okay, based on the gender. Here we reported all the other variables. Then we tested if gender must, if the prediction is constant, is invariant across the different classes, and we find that across all classes there is a gender gap in digitally assessed mathematics. So even whatever it is the Latin class, male outperform females, unfortunately. Okay. The last step was to ascertain whether there is a difference in the distal outcomes, that is digital assessed mathematics, without controlling for gender covariates and controlling for gender covariates. So for a female who has an average socioeconomic background, who is from the center of Italy, and who has not an immigrant background, we can see that students, we use ICT computer not very often and mainly for educational purposes, outperform all the other groups. Also the one with the group of students who use computer across a range of pattern, a range variety of activities, okay, this was our largest cluster, okay, and then we see that the Latin class who perform worse is the one composed by students who only use computer for entertainment. So we think that person-centered approach can really provide a more finer pictures of the differences within digital native generation. I think that it can give also some information about the gender pattern in ICT use. For instance, we can see that Italian students were not very homogeneous, and that they were not a uniform group, And this is a result about boys, and we can also provide some comforting results for it, positive results. For instance, we didn't find a so troubling picture for young girls. They use technologies. As for the relationship between learning and computer user typologies, we can see that on the one hand, our results encourage a moderate use of technology for learning. However, it highlights risk on excessive exclusive use of ICT for leisure. So it may be an at-risk profile. And the last thing is that in any case, there is still a gender gap in math. It is very important to see if the attitude, the computer usage of female will use computer for a range pattern of activities, so not only for entertainment, can help in reducing gender gap in gaps. Thank you for your attention.